You got to press. Excellent.
Good stuff. All right, lads. Well, it's lovely to meet you all. First of all, can I just apologise that I'm not there in person? Poor organisation by my standards. I should be there. I'm being lazy and sitting behind in a cozy chair with a cup of coffee. So I do apologise for that. Obviously, I will meet you face to face fairly soon. But the aim of this session is very much just giving you an introduction to what sports psychology is all about, and hopefully help you identify some value in kind of this process of mental skills training, interacting with myself, and just learn a bit more about the mindset behind a handball athlete. Like Bobby mentioned, what you get out of this process is very much dictated by you guys. And first of all, not just kind of discussing within the open discussions we have, Q&As, but also the notes you make as well. In past times, the evidence that you had to get for this type of module was a work booklet, which was quite time consuming, not always the most practical ways of doing things. So we've gone down a more flexible approach for the learning experience next 2 years. The better ways you can reflect on this is by just simply reflecting on all the experiences you have in relation to sports psychology. So if you have an informal chat with me, you have a workshop, you have a conversation with someone else around psychology, reflect on it, and then that can be used as evidence just to demonstrate you're engaging within the process. It's a lot easier, a lot more informal way of doing it. But it makes sense for you, because I don't want to make this like an education school-based type approach. I want this to be more practical minded and help teach you guys how to apply performance psychology in the real world, which I think is a lot more interesting to you guys. So obviously, before I jump into things, I just want to, again, like I said, because you look like 15 shadows, which is really creepy actually, because I think some of you are wearing hats as well and wearing bibs. So it looks proper creepy and just sitting there still. Do you mind shouting out your names for me, just one by one? So go from left to right.
Yeah, we'll start with the front row from Luca across to you, Oscar, and then we'll go from the back row. Yes, please.
Luca Raisin. Yanali Yakul. Ethan Difford. Angus Grattan. Huey Mullen. Oscar Robert.
Timon Minosky.
Joe Mahoney.
James Fanks.
Melody Budana.
Thomas Mariax.
Gwen Carney.
Raphael Matthews.
AJ Halliwell.
Ricardo Chris. That's everyone, guess what?
Well, nice to meet you all, lads. Just a warning, I've probably forgotten all those names within 2 seconds. But again, it's nice to meet you. And again, I'm sure I'll remember the names the more times I interact with yourself. Like I said, my name is Casper, and I obviously will be the performance site that you engage with over the next couple of years. All right. So I'm going to give you a background of kind of what we're going to be looking at kind of in this session. So John has kindly created a nice little acronym called Master the Mental Game, which is pretty much bang on what I help athletes do. Master the mental game, help you regulate your thoughts, your processes, your emotions, allow you to be the best person you can be. In terms of the module that you go through the next 2 years, these are the 3 main things that you'll go through. First of all, we'll look at identifying an appropriate and personalized mental skills program for yourself. So first of all, to start with that, it'll be all about identifying from your own perspective, what do you need psychologically? And this is what I recommend you start thinking about right now. What's missing in your game? Is it concentration dips all the time? You get easily distracted? Is it that you get sidetracked by poor decisions by the ref? Is it that emotionally you're quite volatile? Is it that you need to improve your communication with your teammates? Whatever it may be, just start to think psychologically, what could you want to improve on, start to build upon, so that can improve your overall game. Because from then, we can identify an appropriate set of goals to improve that and improve your overall psychological performance. Once we've done that, we then implement the program. So that involves simply engaging in these workshops, learning strategies of how to improve your mental game, following my guidance where appropriate, and just trying out things to see what works and what doesn't work, because then we can tweak things to make sure things work better for you. The final aspect of this is then evaluating how things are going. So traditionally, you'd normally have 3 main interactions with myself, which starts off with the education. We then look at tweaking things, and the final bit we evaluate, has it positively impacted your performance levels? And fingers crossed it has done, but that's kind of the process we go through. Breaking it down into a little bit more detail, and these are the main things I would say that you want to reflect upon. And this isn't an easy thing. To understand the psychological side of your game, it takes time, especially if you're new to it all. I always say that athletes are more self-aware of the physical side of their performance and the technical side, because they've been exposed to it and are more familiar with things. whereas psychology isn't so talked about as much, which means you have to engage your own brain and thinking about it on a more regular basis and open yourself up to chat about psychologically, how do you compete and how do you perform. We'll also talk around how you prepare before a match. I always say that when it comes to performing, a lot of the thinking that you do as an athlete is done before a competition. During a competition, you want to be simply doing and not relying on have to reflect and change things and do too much problem solving. You want to be in the flow, you want to be in the right frame of mind. So that's where I do a big focus on helping you psychologically prepare and help yourself be mentally ready for a big competition. And then the final bit on the slide is what you can see is professional discussion. This is the crucial side of it. Like for me, if I don't have a one-to-one with you, and the only aspect I have is within a workshop, I want to be able to see that from a Q&A that I've given you or an open discussion, you're engaging in the process and thinking quite deeply about it and not so much just going yes or no answers. I know that might be a bit weird to chat about stuff, but the more you chat about things, the easier it becomes. So can you give me a thumbs up if that makes all sense to you? Good stuff. Still creepy, those shadows. So this is probably I would say the most fundamental aspect of sports psychology, but anything you're going to do within DiSE, reflection is, I would say, critical. But again, how can I expect you guys or anyone within the whole program and experience to be able to reflect effectively if you don't know how to reflect? So just kind of breaking it down a little bit. On the right-hand side, you've got a session outline or reflection template, which you can use. John's informed me that you've been made familiar about this. And you have access to it, which is in the Google Drive document at the bottom, which you can see on the slide. This is a great little framework you can follow just to help reflect on your thoughts and your experiences and try to identify what's going on. And it's a much easier way compared to writing on a random piece of paper with no structure. So I'd recommend that when you get a chance, just download this onto your computer or your phone so you can easily use it. If you find it easier, just take the questions from the template and put them on your notes section of your iPhone or something, so that way you can still reflect. So going to go a bit more specific, what exactly is reflection from a psychological perspective? So self-reflection is simply paying attention to yourself and examining your thoughts, feelings, and your perceptions of stuff, because you want to understand what you're thinking and when you're thinking. There's this term called automatic thoughts, which means the way you think, thoughts that jump out automatically when you're in a situation. You're not always aware of those thoughts because they're so quick and instant. That's why you need to reflect back on the experience to identify what were you thinking within that specific situation. When it comes to be able to reflect effectively, it's important that you follow some kind of key principles. So the first thing is ask yourself open-ended questions, and do this in any walk of life, because if you go to reflect on something and ask closed questions like did it go well, yes or no, it won't really give you any valuable information. So ask yourself, how did it go? What was important? What was happening in that situation? Second part of this is follow a curious and non-judgmental approach. And I can't stress this enough that when it comes to reflecting, it's about reflecting at the right times. As athletes, especially when something goes wrong, you want to reflect instantly or after a bad game. The problem with that is that you've got a lot of emotions riding through you, which can, I could say, distort the rationality and the realism of what you've gone through. So my little rule of thumb would be that after a performance, whether good or bad, give yourself a good 48 hours before you start to reflect in detail about an experience. And then make sure as well you're doing it through like a non-judgmental approach, which means just be open to the experience. Don't think too much into it in regards to your emotion side. It's just simply going to give you some information that can help you along the way. Ask yourself the right sort of questions. And this is crucially important because you can reflect on anything. There's so many different things you can reflect on, but you want to make sure that when you are reflecting, you're reflecting on the relevant stuff. So that means give yourself a topic to reflect on. Is it emotional control? Is it how you handled the pressure? Is it how you communicated with a teammate? Is it how you led on the pitch? Whatever it may be, just give yourself a topic to focus on, which means when you reflect, you only reflect on the relevant stuff. Give self-reflection the time it deserves. So on the template you can see on the slide, you can see it's looking for a bit more detail in regards to reflection. To be able to do that, you need sufficient time, which means a good at least 15 minutes if you have the time to do it. Don't give yourself 5 minutes, because if you give yourself 5 minutes and rush into it, you're not going to get a lot of quality information from that. And finally, remember that reflection isn't there to hurt you. You might feel uncomfortable sometimes reflecting back on a bad experience, especially if it's embarrassing or if you failed. But remember, if you don't reflect on that, you'll never learn how to improve. So fingers crossed, if you follow these kind of little simple principles, It allows you to reflect more effectively. So moving into what exactly is sports psychology. I love having this conversation with you guys. So before I jump into explaining from my perspective what psychology is all about, has anyone in the room been exposed to a sports psychology session, worked with a sports psych previously?
No.
Lots of no's, Casper.
Lots of no. So would you say that this is your first real experience of looking at psychology in a bit more detail?
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. So that's absolutely fine. What would you say is the reason why you're unfamiliar with sports psychology and what it's about?
Never had the opportunity.
Okay, never had the opportunity. Okay. Anything else?
Sport is seen much more about the body than the mind, so it's maybe not been focused on as much.
Yeah, that's a great way to actually. So again, when you come into like your coaching and training environments, naturally people around you, whether it's coach, teammates, you just normally talk more about the physical side, the technical side, the tactical side. So again, that's one of the things with psychology, like to open yourself up to and learn how to regulate and use psychology to benefit you. It's about having those regular conversations and exposing yourself. And it's much more than not just engaging in these workshops. It's about chatting to your mate about how did you cope, how did you cope psychologically in that performance? How did you deal with that pressure? Those little conversations just make it just normalizes the psychological side of performance. And I'm sure you guys would know, and you probably, when you've watched a lot of professional sport, they always talk about the mental side. And if that's the case, why aren't we as teammates talking about it more often? Because if we don't, how are we supposed to learn and improve? But anyways, in terms of my perspective, in the simplest terms, I believe sports psychology is using the power of the brain or the mind to give power to the body. You could spend all day improving your physical side of your performance, whether it's your strength, your flexibility, your fitness levels. But if you can't apply yourself psychologically, it's useless. So it allows the brain and the mind, so that the mind and the body to be on the same page, so they work in harmony. And you might have seen a little bit when you watch the Olympics that an elite athlete called Simone Biles took a break from some of the competitions because she said that her mind wasn't on the same page as her body. And when she's doing twists and 360s and all these different crazy things in the air, it's extremely dangerous when her mind is not on the same page. So she took a break. So it shows you how influential the mind can be on your performance. If I've not sold you on it, there's a few more quotes that are on the slide. On the left-hand side, you've got a very familiar athlete called Muhammad Ali. And he said, it's a lack of faith that makes people afraid of meeting challenges. And I believed in myself. So again, that self-belief, that self-confidence. On the right-hand side, you've got Michael Jordan, who's, again, a major icon within professional sport. He said, some people want it to happen. Some people wish it could happen. Others make it happen. Okay. And in the middle, I think it's got a really, really good quote here. Just because they say it's impossible doesn't mean you can't do it. And that's probably, I would say, the whole philosophy of psychology. Just because someone's telling you can't do it, there's every chance you could prove them wrong. And this guy in the middle was a prime example of that. I did this quiz with the girls in the last session. I want to see how good you are, lads, with kind of guessing who this is. So the guy in the middle, I'll give you a few clues. He was a runner. Obviously, it was done 50 years ago, but he was famous for doing something in particular in regards to his distance. And there's a clue on the picture, which has got 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. So is there any guesses in the room who that might be in regards to the runner? Yeah, go for it. Yeah, Roger Bannister, yeah. And what was he famous for?
Running a 4-minute mile with the first person to do it.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So at the time he was running, they perceived that, and I use the word perceive as a really, really important point, that they perceived that no one could run the run the mile under 4 minutes. Nowadays, it's regularly done, but at the time it was perceived impossible. And you can see on his face how difficult and challenging it was and how exhausted it was. And he was one of those people that broke that reality that things always stay the same. You can always change someone's perception of a situation. And that is what psychology is all about. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. So in the simplest terms, from a psychological perspective, this is how your performance and your behaviors are impacted. It all starts off with how you think. How you think leads to how it affects how you feel. That then leads on to how it affects your behavior. In simple terms, think good, feel good, play good. That's how I see things. It's really, really simple. Obviously, within the performance setting, psychology sits under an umbrella of different areas of performance. You've got technical, you've got tactical, you've got physical, and you've got psychological. So this is the point now where I want you to think about of these four areas, which is the most important? And there's no right or wrong answers because everyone's perception is different based on their experiences. If I give you an allocation of 100%, what would you allocate each area? So if we started off with, let's start off with psychological, what percentage would you give out of 100% to the psychological area of performance for its importance?
Like 20.
20? Okay. Any reason behind the decision?
Well, if you think tactical and technical and physical, they are like, they play an immediate role in the game, whereas mental is kind of maybe later on in the game, like you've messed up, or, you know, I don't think it's quite as immediate as the first three.
Okay, interesting. Is there anyone in the room that would disagree with the point that psychology isn't necessarily immediate in regards to performance? Go for it.
Well, I mean, if it's like before a game, you're a bit nervous and stuff like that, it has an impact, like
Yeah. during
the game.
Yeah. The first point, I completely get where you're coming from as well. It's not showing me, but it's the idea of what psychology is all about. Psychology is there and everywhere. I would say a lot of the psychology is done before you enter onto the pitch, because during the competition, you simply want to do what you've been practicing all week. But psychology can come in many different forms, from, like you mentioned, how you manage your emotions, how you mentally feel going into a competition. So that means mentally ready, mentally composed. It's all about what you're focused on. So, for example, during a competition, what are the sort of things you think you'd focus on psychologically during a match? What are the typical things?
I guess trying not to mess up.
Yeah. So, okay, avoiding failure. Yeah.
Winning.
Yeah, a great one, winning. Yeah. I'll rephrase it. Think about your roles and responsibilities. So each of you play a position. Each of you will have slightly different responsibilities. So what are the things you need to be focusing on during the match in relation to your position?
Controlling the game.
Yeah, great one. Controlling the great game, which is obviously a team type goal. Anything else?
Knowing where the ball is.
Yeah. So if you, in terms of knowing where the ball is, how does that influence where you have to be?
It influences how you have to like stand.
Yeah, great. Exactly. So the stance, the body position, it's a crucial one. What about as well? So if you think about game intelligence and scanning the game, what's involved in that process?
Well, as a keeper, I sometimes tell people where their line is if they don't know where he is.
Great example. So communication, helping your teammates know where they are. Other things I'll just add to that, it also includes like the tempo of the game, the speed. You've got the strategies. So we kind of coming back to this ratio. So we've done a lot of talking there, and you're seeing that psychology is quite broad. There's a lot of different aspects of what psychology is all about. So if you use that original stat of 20%, would we increase it at all?
Yeah.
What would we put it at now, knowing that it's a bit more broad?
35.
Okay, 35. Okay, cool. All right. So we've got 35 for that. So we've got 65 left to play with. So this is an interesting topic now. So we'll move on to physical. So of that final 65%, how important is the physical side of the game? What ratio would you give for that one?
I'm going to say 10.
Okay.
It's like, you know, it's not always the biggest player that does the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really, really good point, actually. It's not so much, I guess you could say it's not so much how much strength you have, how much big you are. It's about how you utilize your skill set and your resources. Would anyone disagree with that at 10%?
Yeah, you need stamina as well and speed.
Okay.
Well, not
So,
necessarily speed, but
yeah.
definitely need stamina.
So what, in your opinion, what would the ratio be?
Probably about 20.
20. Okay, so we're up to 55 here now. So technical and tactical, which can be very similar to each other. So of that final 45%, where are we placing that of the two areas? So start with technical. What are we going to do for that one?
30%.
30%. Okay, so that takes us up to the final 15% is tactical. So if we rated them, you've gone psychological, the biggest percentage, followed by technical, followed by physical, followed by tactical. Would you be happy with that? And it's not a trick question, don't worry. You all look so nervous to answer that one. I think as well, if you might have seen from people, each people giving their opinions, everybody's got a different idea of how it looks. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to, I guess, challenge and have it up. There's always more than one way to look at what's the most important thing. Because you come back to that little triangle we say about thinking affects how you feel and how it affects your behavior. It works the way as well. So if you focus on your behavior, so if you tactically do really, really well, that can impact psychologically. So in some sense, you could justify that tactical is more important. If you physically feel really good going into a match, that could influence you psychologically. So it's always interchanged and interlinked. So there's no wrong answers in it. It's just interesting to have that conversation around what's important and what you should focus on. Okay. So next one. So this is always a fun one. Again, it's always good me chatting around psychology and how it influences your performance. It's great to see real life examples of performance psychology and see it from the top athletes in the world. This is a video of Novak Djokovic, who is due in the final of the US Open. I think he's due, if he wins, he'll win all 4 Grand Slams of the year, which is absolutely crazy. But what I want you to do is I want you to watch this video. I don't know if you can see it very well. So if you can't see it very well, obviously come closer. There is subtitles and just watch what's going on and read what's happened to Novak Djokovic.
Fuming at the crowd right now. That's him on the foot. He'll need to be careful, Novak. It's 5-4, team leads.
I didn't know there was that's completely forbidden. I thought it was a nice, really friendly touch. Wasn't aggressive with him in terms of physical abuse.
All right. Again, unfortunately, Donald Trump's there, so I do apologize for that image. You guys obviously saw Novak Djokovic. He was obviously, I would say, one of the world elite athletes in the world. He's won several tournaments, several championships. Obviously, you saw that performance wasn't a smooth running, easy performance. So what do you think happened to him mentally during that match?
It's like the stress kind of like build up.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. What do you think caused him to be stressed? Did you notice anything that was, I don't know if you're reading subtitles, did you notice what was causing it?
Was it the crowd?
Yeah, crowd was one of them, yeah.
I guess the pressure of the game as well.
Yeah, pressure of the game. There was a big part of it around the umpire. So what do you think he was frustrated with the umpire?
You didn't agree with his call?
Yeah, that's a key one. And it wasn't just the in terms of decisions in regards to the calls he was making. It was also as well, he voiced his unfairness in regards to the crowd. Obviously there was a massive bias towards, I think, Dominic Thiem, who was the other tennis player at the time playing. And he felt like if anything that was going against him, it was unfair. And he was trying to say something needs to be done about it, but sadly nothing was happening. And obviously, I don't know if you saw, but you saw he hit the foot, well, not hit, he touched the foot of the umpire. I think Bobby might know the answer to this one. If you touch the ref in a handball match, if you're unhappy with something, what do you think is the likely outcome of that scenario?
2 minutes off. Not sent off. 10 minutes off.
Yeah, sent out. Anything else?
Card maybe.
Pardon?
Card maybe.
Yeah, could do. Anyone remember any I guess any examples from football? Football's a very well-known example of this, where players have touched refs and what's happened to them.
Red carded.
Yeah, red carded, but in football it comes afterwards. They get fined and they get banned for games. I think Cristiano Ronaldo was a prime example. If you ever, I don't know if you've ever seen it. If you go onto YouTube and type it in, Cristiano was unhappy and he did like a little tap like this on the ref, and he was, I don't know how many games he was banned for, but he was banned for a decent amount of games. So it can happen. So if you do that, it leads to major consequences. You saw it in the video. The tennis player does it. The fine is $20,000 US, which I know for us guys that could be a year's salary. So it's a lot of money. So again, you saw emotionally he was all over the place. Also as well, what he was focused on, he was really distracted. He was focused on the crowd. He was focused on the umpire's decisions. He was focused on what other people was doing. And all the common thing with this is there are things outside of his control, which meant his mindset wasn't fully in the game in regards to what can he do, what's in his control. It's how he applies himself, how he executes the skill. Yes, he won the game, but it was a 5-setter, which was a challenging, long game. And he has the ability to be quite smooth. So it showed that it impacts his game. He's only able to win the match, probably because of all his background, his experience of being in those situations. But some athletes might not be able to handle the pressure. Did anybody watch the US Open last night with Emma Raducanu?
Yeah.
So again, you saw 2 young athletes, and did everyone notice? Did you notice that the crowd had quite a major bias towards the other athlete who's Canadian? I can't remember what her name was. Layla something, Layla Fernandez, I think it was. And every time she did well, there was huge cheering. It's a big stadium. They cheered okay for Emma. They didn't boo, but it was a lot lower and quieter. And you could imagine, at 18 years old, if you're in this massive setting in a public eye, all the cameras are on you, very easily you could crack under pressure. But Emma Raducanu, only 18 years old, she went through qualifying. She didn't drop a set. She managed to win against kind of against the crowd. The equivalent that would be like an underdog going into a home stadium with a big team and beating them. So it shows you psychologically it can make a massive difference. So what I want you to think about a little bit more detail now is just in general, what do you think can lead? What can influence you mentally during a match? What can lead to you changing your emotion, changing your mindset? What are the I think you call them stresses? What causes you to mentally change during a game?
Decisions per against you that shouldn't. Like,
Okay.
it's your opinion of them, but
Yeah. It's a great one. So like decisions made by other people, whether that could be your coach, it could be the ref. Anything else?
Boos from the crowd.
Yeah. So that's again taking it from the video. Crowds can have a major influence, and the energy they provide can influence you. And if you feel like the positive energy isn't directed towards you, it can really bring you down. Anything else?
consistent,
Sorry, say that again.
consistent errors.
Yeah. So interesting point in this one. So it could be consistent errors made by yourself. Would you say from your own experiences, you've ever been frustrated by consistent errors made by your teammates?
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Probably like a game of possession, maybe.
Yeah. So again, it's just thinking about mentally. It's not always on your own. Sometimes it's the environment you place within, and your teammates can have a massive influence on how you feel and how you behave. And if someone's making consistent errors like your teammate, you could easily get pissed off with them, and then the whole team gets annoyed, or you pick them up, and then you all feel positive. So there's a massive thing there. Anything else? What about things going into a match? What do you think could affect you mentally going into something?
The other team.
Oh, sorry, say that again.
The other team.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that? Do you mean like if the team's better than you, or?
Yeah, you might think that they're really intimidating, like as in like how good they are.
Okay. So to kind of elaborate on that, it's kind of like your expectations of what you're going to experience going into something. Okay, that's great, really good point. Anything else? What about your preparation? So with this sort of thing, what do you think you need to prepare? What things do you typically prepare before a match?
Equipment.
Equipment, yeah, great one, yeah.
Yourself?
Yourself. So let's look at the stuff. So what within yourself do you prepare?
You stretch,
Sorry, say that again.
stretch.
Yeah, physical preparation, which is a good one. So if you feel good, you're gonna think good going into something. Anything else?
Mental preparation?
Yeah. So with mental preparation, what would you say you would think you need to think about going into a match? Anyone? I'm sure you know that. I presume you've all played a competitive match before.
Like, sorry, what was the question again?
So what would you think you need to think about going into a match? What are the important things?
Oh, just play your game.
Yeah, play your game. Yeah, stick to what you know. Anything else?
Remember all the moves, like if you've got pre-planned moves.
Yeah, good. So rehearsing your strategies and your plan. That's a great one.
If it's a team game, playing as a team.
I love that. So yeah, I like the team morale. So that's really, really good. So the answers are flying out now. What's going on? There was a slow start here, but those are really, really good answers. What about emotionally? What would you think? What would you want to focus on emotionally going into a match? Or how do you want to feel?
Confident.
Yeah, confident. Yeah.
Psyched up.
Yeah. So in this room, this is always an interesting debate. Some athletes like to be psyched up. Some like to be really calm and relaxed. In the room, who likes to be psyched up? Just put your hands up so I can roughly see who likes to be psyched up. Okay, so you like it looks about 4 or 5. So would the rest, and then the other ones put their hands up for being relaxed. Okay, so it's mixed. It's interesting. That's a really important point to think about when you go into a match. Are you doing things that allow you to activate the muscle, the emotions that are going to help you out? If you need to be psyched up, classic strategies will be very physically demanding stretches. So that it gets your heartbeat going fast, quite deep, fast breathing to get your heartbeat going quickly. Listen to the right type of music. That's a really important question. I think from this, because you're quite new to psychology, that's probably a good starting point is, am I doing things to activate the right type of emotions? If I want to be psyched up, am I doing the right stuff? If I'm not, how can I tweak that? Who can I go to change things? But again, some really, really good answers there. So moving on from this kind of the negative side to the positive side, when it comes to psychology, it's also around as well, replicating the good stuff and replicating the good performances. So we find this more challenging to do, to reflect on positive experiences because it feels uncomfortable, and we find it easier to reflect on bad stuff. But what I'd recommend is that to help protect you from mistakes and protect you from your weaknesses, strengthen your strengths. And the best way of doing that is reflect on the good experiences that you have as an athlete, whether that is a training experience or a competitive performance. What I want you to do though is just pause for a second and think back to a recent experience you've had, whether it was training or a match, and think about one that went really, really, really well. And I want you to ask yourself, what were you focused on, or what were you thinking during that good performance? Again, if someone's got an answer straight away, jump in there. All quiet here. So, boys, you're really good with these answers. So just pause for a second. So, what would you think, if you can't think of one, what do you think you would be focused on during like one of your best performances ever? What do you think you'd be focused on?
As a keeper, I just focus on one or two things, which are the ball and the shooting hand of the shooter.
Yeah, I like that. So you're kind of saying you have very minimal things you think about. It's like a very narrow focus, because if you go too broad, you can get caught up and there's too many things to think about, so you get distracted. So I like that. Any athletes in the room would say that they don't actually think at all during the performance. The thinking they will probably do is either before or after when they're reflecting. Anyone in the room for that one?
No.
Okay, well, I'll just explain a little bit. So like I said right at the start, is you do all the preparation that you do for a match is done in training at home, whatever it may be, whether it's physical, tactical, psychological. So you want to do all of the main thinking before you go into a match. You want to be, during the actual match, you want to just be relying on the work you've already done, which is why when you hear the terms like being in the zone or being in the flow, you're not really thinking at all. You're just simply doing, because your subconscious brain is guiding you in that moment. Because if you consciously think about something, it will slow you down. It will distract you about something. And because handball is such a quick, fast-paced game, it's just constantly changing and adapting. If you're spending too much time reflecting on something and thinking about something, you'll lose where you are and lose focus. Which is why athletes who have the best performances, when I ask them what were you focused on, they'll say, actually, in fact, I wasn't actually really thinking at all. I was just doing what I needed to do in that moment, which I think one of you actually mentioned. And I got a question at the bottom, would you want to consistently perform like this? Which I'm sure it's a no-brainer, yes, you do. But until you know what you're doing and what you're focused on, and you reflect a little bit, you won't be able to replicate it on a regular basis. So moving on a little bit more. So as you chatted, psychology is in many different aspects. It's always in sport. I want you to think about right now is how much time do you spend per week training the mind? Anyone care to have a go at that and just inform me like how much you spend time?
4 to 5 hours.
4 to 5 hours. Okay. Can you explain to me a little bit in terms of what you do with those 4 to 5 hours to help you mentally train?
Well, I like to train my brain to be extremely fast.
Okay.
I'm making decisions that are very efficient.
Okay.
The game chess, if you play chess but extremely fast, like you have to make a move within 3 seconds,
Yeah.
and it forces you to make a good move in a really, really short time, and doing it over and over and over again eventually makes you make right decisions and in general, like making up ideas, little things.
Yeah, that's a great example, actually. I think obviously you want to make quick decisions, but you want to make the right decisions. And the only way you can do that is through practicing. Like for example, chess is a very strategic game. If anyone heard, like last night when Emma Raducanu was on the pitch, the commentator said that she used a Rubik's Cube to help her train her brain and problem solve. Does anyone in the room play have a Rubik's Cube or like any sort of mental strategy game that they might play on their phone? Is that a no?
No.
That's something I would recommend, actually, guys. Like it's called like mental fitness. So, and chess is a fantastic example. If you want to become efficient in decision making and make quick decisions, like any muscle, you strengthen it. And fitness, like mental fitness games on your phone, are a great way of doing it. Just as a pre thing as well, athletes like to use it as like a distraction before a match. If you're someone that thinks a bit too much and overthinks things, this mental fitness game is like a Scrabble game or something like anything that's a problem solving game will allow your brain to become a bit more efficient, a bit more warmed up going into something. So it's a great way of doing it. There's other ways as well that you train your brain. You might be familiar with this. You also, does anyone listen to music on a regular basis to help chill out and switch off? Yeah, so these are like all these different examples, just becoming aware of it. So like listening to music is a great way because it helps the brain switch off. It could be that you set goals, you review how things have gone. That's another examples of mental training. But until you ask yourself what you do, you might not be aware of it. It might be that, oh, actually I do a lot of this, great stuff. If you realize you're someone that's listening to this right now and going, I don't do this regularly, then maybe I need to do a little bit more of this. Because if I asked you how often do you do strength and conditioning sessions, you could probably bang out an answer instantly and go to me, oh yeah, I go to the gym twice a week for 2 hours. Super easy, super simple, because you're super aware of it because it's always talked about. Again, as you're learning from this workshop, psychology is a bit more blended, it's not as obvious to you. So it's about looking a bit more deep. So can I get moving on? This is the process that you'll go through over the next kind of 12 months. We're starting off with the education side, so learning all about what is mental skills, how to do it and why is it important. We move on to an acquisition phase, which is all about testing the waters. So you learn a strategy, we then test it out in the practice environment. If it works, great, we do more of it. If it doesn't work, we tweak things. Then we move on to the final phase, which is the practice phase, which is all about successfully applying it in the performance setting. I can't stress this enough. If you learn about some new mental skill, whether it's imagery, a breathing exercise, don't try it for the first time in a competition because you'll be under more pressure and you might fail at it. which means you're less inclined to do it again. I recommend that you try it in a practice environment where there's less consequences. So this is the bit where we'll be looking at a little bit more detail. When it comes to mental skills training, for me to make sure that I'm delivering a program for you guys that is going to help you, I need to understand your needs and kind of personalize the program, which is why you can see here, it's an individualized design program. The mental skills that you train on will vary from athlete to athlete. And it's all dependent on what you want and what you require, which is why I asked you at the start of this workshop, or write down in your notes, what do you think you need psychologically? Is it emotional support? Is it developing your skill execution? Is it your decision making? Is your ability to stay focused? Whatever it is, think about those needs, and then from that point on, we can work out what skills can we use to meet those needs. So these are the skills that we're going to be hopefully looking at developing. Okay, and these don't come out of thin air. This pretty much comes from interviewing a number of elite athletes and asking them, what do you think you need to succeed? This came from, I think it was the gold medalist project from 2018. So they interviewed a number of medalists from different competitions and asked them, what do they need and require? And this is something I want you to think about right now, and this will help you with your self-reflection. And the most important one from every athlete which they spoke to is they said that passion and motivation is crucial, because that drives you forward in your sporting career. So if you're someone going right now, I'm not sure if I'm passionate about handball, or my motivation's not quite there, some great ways to go around this is just asking yourself, what does handball give you? Think about the benefits. So is it that it gives you an opportunity to socialize with mates? Is it that it allows you to win competition and feel good about yourself? Is it the trophies? Whatever it is, just think about what handball gives you, because that will automatically increase your passion towards the sport. Secondly, as well, learn more about the sport, immerse yourself within the environment. So speak to teammates, speak to coaches, speak to elite players that have been there, said it and done it. Learn more what it's all about, because that sparks your interest. And if you're more interested in something, you're more likely to be motivated. The second one is achievement goal setting. And who would be honest with me and say that they don't set many of their own goals on a regular basis? Put your hands up if that's the case. Yeah, all right, fair enough. That's great. A lot of hands there. That's completely normal. And I'll say that the reason I say that is because a lot of athletes, they will pursue goals that are set by their coaches. And those goals can be in many formats, whether it's physical, psychological, technical. What do you think what's the risk of someone else setting you a goal? What is the risk of that? Go for it.
You might not be able to achieve it, and that could be like demoralizing.
Yeah.
Get rid of your motivation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because sometimes the person that sets your goal might not realize what's realistic and what's not realistic. So yeah, good point. Anything else?
It won't be personal to you, like there might be something you want to work with.
Yeah, actually, that's a bang on. That's a great, really, really good point. That it might not be important to you. What they think is important to you could be different to what you think is important. Which is why, as an athlete, and even though goal setting is not necessarily the most fun thing to do, if you get into the habit of self-setting your own goals, it will benefit you because you'll stay more engaged in the process. And it's a simple thing to do. If a coach gives you a goal, rephrase it in your own language and just tweak it a little bit to personalize it. And that is such an easy strategy to utilize, because you put it in your own language, you will understand it better. It will become more important to you. Self-awareness and quality self-reflection. Again, it's all about your needs and being aware of what you need mentally and how things are progressing. And I've got the word there, quality self-reflection, because again, when you reflect, you need to make sure you're reflecting on the right thing and kind of learning information that's going to benefit you. Planning and organization. So before I jump into this, I will say when I was your age, I was awful for planning organization. It's probably the one thing that I couldn't be asked doing. Didn't do timetables. I just kind of went with the flow and hopefully cope with it all. Who in this room would say that there's someone along those lines that they struggle planning and organizing their whole sort of lifestyle?
A lot of hands up, Caspar.
A lot of hands up, yeah, a lot of hands up. So again, simple reflection. It might be that if you're in that boat, start thinking about, do I need to do a timetable? Do I need to start just prioritizing what's important? That's the simplest way of like getting better organization. Is just ask yourself, what's important right now and what do I need to focus on? You got self-talk, which is all about how you speak to yourself. You might be an athlete that thinks aloud. or an athlete that thinks silently. Either way, it's important that you understand about what you think and how you speak to yourself, because remember, that will dictate how you behave. Mental toughness, very straightforward. We know what that's all about. Self-belief. I would say athletes will go up and down when it comes to believing in yourself. And this will stem from many different factors through succeeding as an athlete, failing as an athlete, what other people tell you, how you feel. The self-belief is crucial because that leads to a thing called a challenge mindset. And what I mean by that is when you go into a challenging situation or something that's stressful, it means you find it stressful and you perceive it stressful, but you have the belief that you can cope and get something good out of it. Whereas if you're an athlete that doesn't believe in themselves, or they're anxious or expect the worst, you develop a thing called a threat mindset, which you're always focused on avoiding failure, avoiding making mistakes, which is always the wrong type of mindset to do, but it's very easy to fall into. If you go into a match trying to avoid something bad happening, 9 times out of 10, you talk yourself into it. Whereas if you go into a match thinking about what am I going to do? Wow, oh, this could go well. I'm optimistic about that. You talk yourself into that thing. So that's why self-belief and self-talk are really, really important. All of this stuff, all these kind of 7 components falls into the final one, which is psychological flexibility, which means over time, you're able to learn and know how to think and when to think a certain way. So before a match, I know that I need to be boosting myself up and focusing on my performance goals and what I need to do in the match. After a match, I know what I need to do to help regulate my emotions and calm myself down. It's all about being on top. And again, in simple terms, mastering your mental side of the game. So this is this really, really good starting point. And I've mentioned this quite a lot throughout the whole of this workshop. Think about what do you want from a psychological perspective. This 5-step process is really simple, okay? So you might be going, right, I need to improve decision making. Great stuff. What does that look like in terms of the picture? So create a clear image in your brain. So if I'm an effective decision making, it means under pressure, I know when to pass at the right time and when to take a shot. I know when to intercept the ball and know when to make a tackle. These crucial things. So with that image in mind, that positive image, how does it feel that you're able to do that? Oh, it feels fantastic. I feel confident in myself. This is a really important point. You want to visualize and feel the end state of achieving that image that you create in your brain from a psychological perspective, because it'll give you that ambition, that drive and energy to keep going. The 4th step is then, right, if I want to become an effective decision maker, what do I need to do? Great example, playing more chess. With decisions as well, it's all about information. To make the right decisions, you need to know how to make the right decisions. Who can I go to get that information? Coaches, teammates. I could model my behavior off an elite athlete by looking at YouTube and watching videos, variety of ways. It could be that I train hard, I listen to coaches doing training sessions. The process is the key things. And the final step is you simply do it. So that 5-step loop is really handy to follow constantly over and over again. It's a really, really good framework. Within that though, the images in your brain that you create of what you want to achieve, and also the emotional side, play a key part in terms of your persistence and your drive to keep going. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Good stuff, good stuff. So moving on, and this is always a fun one. I would say the best athletes in the world have developed good performance habits. And when I use the word habit, it means something you consistently do that helps you. It's a habit, it's a routine. So before I move into what is the process of habit formation, the girls are really good at this. I want you to start thinking about what are some good performance habits that help you succeed.
Yoga.
Sorry?
Yoga.
Oh, I hear that, sorry.
Yoga.
Yoga?
Yeah, that's a habit.
You say yoga?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I think you said yoga. I was like, I don't know what that was. Yeah, yoga. So that's a great example. Yeah. So like you could say like, I guess that's both physical and mental relaxation, which is a great one. Anything else?
Come on, chaps. The girls smashed this part.
Yeah.
What are we thinking about?
Think about lifestyle, if that's a better way of doing it.
Yeah,
About
Facebook, we've got one. Eating well.
eating well, great stuff. Yeah, eating well. Anything else?
Sleep.
Music.
Yeah, sleep and music. Who has like who's confident to admit who has a bedtime routine? Good stuff. What is within that routine?
Brush teeth, have a shower, lotion, and then no, my skin gets dry. My skin gets dry.
Hey, it's all important.
And then I'll like you know, turn my device off half an hour before sleep and then go to sleep.
Perfect.
I like that. Boys, you need to be following. That's a great example. It's a role model in the room there. Especially he takes care of his skin. If you feel good, you're going to perform well.
Thanks, Angus.
Sorry?
I just said thanks to Angus for sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really good. Sleep hygiene is what they call it. Sleep is a major one. So thank you for sharing that, guys. Anything else? Any other habits? You're eating well, sleeping well? Yeah, exercising. Yeah, it's a great one. Obviously, there's a lot of things that add to this list. What do you think is an important skill to have to manage all these different well-being habits that you're referring to?
Like time management skills.
Yeah, bang on. Time management skills. Yep. Anything else?
Organisation.
Yep. Organization. Yep. Any more?
Planning.
Yep. Planning is a great one. Yeah. Preparation, being proactive. I like that. So again, you can just see there's a few examples there. There's loads you can fly out in terms of habits, whether it's like doing things to make yourself feel good, having regular breaks, the sleep. There's loads of stuff. And all these are things that developed over time. And to develop those, you go through a process. So, for example, for me, I've got to have my morning coffee in the morning. I've got to have a shower before I get going for the day because that helps me feel mentally refreshed, mentally charged. And each of those behaviors are developed over time. And they all start off with a cue or a trigger. So, example of this, to help you prepare to do a behavior, a great example of a cue is a reminder on your phone. So it could be in the evening, your phone dings off going, right, it's 9:30 or 10:30, half an hour before bed, I need to go into my routine to switch off and mentally kind of calm down for the evening. It's really, really important that you develop these routines because if you don't have regular routines, you'll never feel prepared going into something. And this is why habits are really, really important. Here's a few examples to help you with this, kind of get into a regular mindset. So are we able to see this on the screen? Is it big enough?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So what I've got on here is a skill called cueing. So simply means things that tells the brain what to do. All of us would do this. Some of you might be more familiar. And the cues kind of go into three main categories. Verbal cues, so what you say to yourself. Visual cues, which is what you see. And then behavior cues. All those things help you activate a certain type of mindset that you need to succeed within the situation or the task that you're doing. And they can come in different formats. You've got cues to help you execute strategies, which are instructional ones. You've got cues to execute emotional side. So if you want to feel good, this is what you need to do. And then you've got psychological focus, so other cues to help you feel psychologically ready or focused before going to a game. So if we start off with the behavior one, which you might be more familiar with, any athletes out here that do anything they typically do before a match to feel psychologically ready?
Listen to music.
Yeah, listen to music, yeah.
Particular type of music?
Yeah.
Particular song?
Sorry?
Any particular song?
Yeah.
What?
What? The song?
Share.
I don't really know. It's not like, I don't know the name of it.
Okay, sounds like a great song.
Yes.
do you have like a playlist?
Yeah.
It's like a playlist, yeah. So that's a great example. Anyone do like any like really specific behavior? So some people, like the girls mentioned, that they shake their legs or they click their fingers or they have to pull their socks up. Anyone do that at all? Go for it. What do you do?
In rugby, when you put on your head guard, you like tap it a few times.
Yeah, tap the head, yeah. Anyone else?
Oh, whenever I do, whenever a penalty is going to happen, I touch the crossbar and that's my name.
Yeah.
Just touch the crossbar.
Yeah, it's good. That's a great
I used to
example.
do that, I did.
I think it's a really good one. It's just it makes you feel, that's like helping you feel calm. You know where you're at. You know what your environment is. You feel in control. You got on the slide. It's slapping thighs. For me, my main sport was football, and I was central defender. And the things I used to do before the whistle went, I was going to do 2 high knee jumps and then slap my thighs twice. I guess you could kind of say that's similar to like parts of the haka, like the New Zealand rugby team do. But that type of thing, those physical behaviours helped me, I would say, feel mentally ready and mentally composed. But if I didn't do those simple behaviours or the cues, my mindset would not be in the right place. So that's why these cues are really, really important. Verbal cues are particularly powerful as well. So on the car ride to car ride to like a pitch somewhere, or even just before the whistle goes, saying certain things to yourself can make a massive difference. So if you know you're an overthinker, just say, "Oh, keep calm, you're going to be fine." It could be reassurance. An example of verbal cues. Did anyone watch Jordan Pickford in the England penalties during the Euro final?
Yeah.
What was he saying to himself?
You said like, I've got this or something.
I've got this and it's okay, I'm fine. Which what that led to, it activated the mindset of I'm feeling calm, I'm composed, I'm ready to focus on what he's doing. Who did he save the penalty against? Jorginho. So again, his cue, so his routine of how he kicks the ball, his cue is how the goalkeeper reacts. And you saw that Jordan Pickford didn't react, which means he was able to save the penalty. So he took control of the situation. So again, the cue allowed him to activate a certain mindset and lead to behavior that helped him in that scenario. Cueing is such a elegant, simple skill, but it can be really, really powerful in terms of what it gives you. So that's my recommendation to you, is just think about, right, what behaviors am I doing and what does it lead to? If it's that you want to feel ready for a match, start to develop a type of behavior that or routine that you can follow before a match. You got examples like that: 3 deep breaths, pull up your socks, slap your thighs, whatever it may be. Have simple behaviors that you can adopt on a consistent basis, which becomes a good habit. So then eventually you get to a point where you don't have to even say it. Okay, so I'll finish on this one again because we're running out of time here. I want you to finish on how can you develop good habits, because it's all good and well me saying, all right, habits are crucial. Here's some really consistent, simple strategies. First of all, consistency is really, really important. And what I mean by this is do things at a similar time in the similar environment. So you always shower at the same time, and you probably always get up at the same time. You always have a coffee at a similar time. Repeat it. And this is crucial because for you to become automatic and you're subconscious to guide your behavior, you need to do it on a daily basis or at least 3 or 4 times a week. Research suggests that your brain can take between 2 to 3 to 4 months for a behavior to go from a one-time thing to an automatic behavior. So the more you do it, the quicker it will transfer from short-term memory to long-term memory. Number 3 is temptation building. So again, if you try to do something new when you're in a bad mood, you're probably unlikely to repeat it. So what I would recommend is try a new behavior or a new habit after you've had a positive experience, because you'll be feeling more open-minded, more calm and more relaxed. By doing that, you're more open to try it again because you associate the positive emotions with a new behavior. To do it after you feel good. And habit stacking, this is a great one as well. As you've already mentioned, you've already established a number of habits already. Sometimes it can be challenging to integrate a new habit, especially when you're limited for time. So try to do a new habit, a new behavior at the same time as you've already a habit. Oh, I can't speak now. Sorry, try to do a new behavior at the same time as an already established habit. So a prime example is for me, when I used to have my breakfast for 2 minutes, while I was waiting for the porridge to heat up in the microwave, for 2 minutes, I would do some stretching movements, just so I'd already feel a bit more flexible to start the day. And that's a great example of stacking a new behavior onto an already established habit, which means the new habit will stick more easily. Okay, so finishing off on this point, lads, this is something I want you to think about going forward now. Mental skills training is only going to be helpful if you do it consistently. And here's a few kind of guide marks or rules to follow. Ensure that you try to get into the habit of doing it 3 to 5 times a week. So whether that's listening to music on a regular basis, whether that's reflecting on something, having breaks from stressful situations, make sure you're doing it 3 to 5 times a week. Have at least 5-10 minutes per session. So it's simply 10 minutes listening to music can make a big difference. Do it during training sessions and at home, so during those practice environments. Reflect on a regular basis to make sure that what you're doing is helping you, if you need any tweaking or changes. And then finally, focus on the motivation, because if you're new to sports psychology and you still question the value of kind of what it'll bring to your life and your performance, think about what you'll gain from doing these mental skills training and focus on that positive mindset. Right, what I'll gain from this is I'll be more mentally composed, I'll be more confident, I'll be able to execute my cues under pressure, whatever it may be. It will give you a benefit. So think about what will you gain from psychology. And we're finished. I know we went on quite a lot there. It was a long session. But lads, engaging in this process is really, really important. And I can appreciate you've engaged really well within this process today, especially when there's some questions that you might not be familiar with or not sure know how to answer. but thank you so much for kind of inputting your answers within this, and I appreciate that. The more you expose yourself to psychology, the more you get out of it. So again, you can get in contact with me in any format, whether it's over the phone, over Skype sessions, whether it's in person when I'm at the camps. Just kind of take advantage of kind of my knowledge and other people's knowledge as well, because it will hopefully benefit you in some format. So thanks for listening.
Nice one, Caspar.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I'll catch up with you later on, buddy.
See you
Cheers.
soon, mate.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Casper. They're all gone.
Oh, God. You managed to get